Hey y'all, Craig Walker here, Subtle Energy Mechanics. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. Thank you. Today we're going to continue with a discussion of koshas, energy, moving around the body, but particularly if you've got, something really challenging like long COVID or one of the other or a painful situation that you're struggling with, and you suspect there's some kind of energetic component to it. And so we're going to put this all in context of like, maybe it's a Kundalini awakening, and how would I know? And what does that look like? I just started reading this book last night, Carl Jung, The Psychology of Kundalini Yoga. Now, I'm a yoga instructor. I'm not a Kundalini yoga instructor, but when I look back at my training, and my training even before the yoga instructor training was in the medical world, and I was trained, strangely enough, in the specific technology of how Kundalini awakens in somebody. And it can be very traumatic, and it requires kind of a specific mechanic to help that process happen in some situations. Some people just move through it very smoothly. Other people, you get stuck in the process, and that can feel rather deadly, actually. And so we want to break into that a bit today, and how that might look. And do you hear yourself in this situation? You've tried this and this and this and this and this, and you can't find the answer to what you're in. In fact, many of the clients that I work with now were doctors or healers or professionals that had to quit their life altogether, move back to mom and dad's property, and they're living in some kind of remote cabin on the property because their body is so energetically sensitive to the world, to other people, to things that they can't even tell what's going on, that their body's like getting physically nauseous or convulsing. Their sleep is destroyed. They're anxious. They're angry. They're reactive. They're embarrassed or ashamed about how they're actually responding to other people. And it's a hellish place to find yourself stuck in. Now, something that Jung talks about in this book, and again, I'm only a few pages in, but something he says right early on is he says, I think that a lot of what I'm seeing in practice actually is this Kundalini awakening process gone wrong, or somebody stuck in it. So let's talk about what that might look like. And this is something that I found myself recognizing also with many of my clients, and even with some of myself. You maybe heard me talk about other traumas that I've had, not only PTSD causing traumas, like specific events that made the body go on alert for things that might actually come out of nowhere that might happen to me, but also complex PTSD triggering events, which isn't necessarily a thing coming out of nowhere, but it's actually a response to the absence of something in life. And that oftentimes what that something is a particular mirroring of what I am by somebody else. Being in a relationship with somebody, not necessarily an intimate relationship, but just being in relationship with somebody where they are seeing all of you and taking delight in all of you, in the part of you that completely relaxes and just settles in contentment, just being in yourself, in the part of you that gets really excited about specific things, the part of you that like thinks through things. And I'm just actually naming my way up through the koshas now. And the part of you that's dreaming, and the part of you that is energetically what I call field centric, the part of you that recognizes yourself as everything, that might identify as empathic or highly sensitive, that you feel that your body's actually responding to everything that's happening out here, not as a separate thing responding to an event across space, but you actually feel it happening. Part of you that is non-dual, that's unified. Now we're getting in the weeds here because we've left science behind. We've left conventional understanding behind and medical or scientific knowledge behind. So if you start having a negative reaction to something that's happening out here in space, who's going to help you figure that one out? And that's how these people found themselves living in vans. I've talked to people, from around the world, like living in a van in the woods because they can't deal with the population. They can't hold down a job. They're just eking along because that's the most safe container they've been able to build for themselves. which on the one hand, it's great. You got to have a safe container where you can actually breathe. But what's happening is sometimes they're not actually feeling safe and they're not actually breathing, right? And they're not actually feeling, internally, there's an anxious or a desperation because you realize like somewhere deep down, you're here for something, to do something. Of our 6 needs, contribution is one of them. Significance is another one of them. Connection and love is another one of them. All 3 of those, 3 of the 6, require you actually being open, easy, relational, giving with other people, right? Part of you is designed to be relational. And so sometimes this Kundalini awakening process gone wrong, it damages your ability to be safe and calm and content and relational. So then you're forced to make a decision for yourself that you never wanted to make. You have to retreat from all of those parts of life that you're here to do, to feel whole, to be in an easy exchange without feeling like you have to protect yourself from other people's darkness because your body gets nauseous or it wants to turn away or it wants to fight. So your body starts to rebel against life and you have to basically package up your body and stick it in isolation as much for yourself as for other people. And how would looking at the koshas help us find another way through this problem? And that's what I want to talk about today. So that's one of my clients there. It looks just like him. Sorry, mate, if you recognize that's you, but I'm a good artist. Okay, so I'm working with him this morning. And his main concern, now he's been bedridden for a couple of years with long COVID. His main, bedridden meaning his main concern is CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome. He's exhausted. He can't leave the house. He can't leave the bed. But now look at the contrast here. When he and I start working together, he lies down on the bed and I'm just doing Kundalini energy, consciousness, quantum energy nonsense over the Zoom call. Here's my disclaimer. I'm not doing it. I'm not working as a doctor. I'm not diagnosing or treating anything. So don't take anything I say on here as medical advice. Make any medical decisions based on what I'm saying on here. Okay, disclaimer, done. Right, so you should take that on your own. So the people that I work with, I'm not working on any medical situation. Right, we're just working with what are we doing in the collective field together. We merge our consciousnesses, and what can we do from a unified, non-dual perspective that can influence how your body is responding to energy all over the place. Because that's the game that you might find yourself in, is that you're reacting to shit that shouldn't even exist. And I say that, coming from a place that I, was a doctor and I very much was trained in all of that scientific stuff. And my family are all doctors and scientists. Like that's the world I come from. And that's the world you happily stay in until some Kundalini shit hits the fan and you're responding to stuff that shouldn't happen. And then you basically are forced to go looking for answers for what you're actually in right now. What's happening right now? Why am I feeling this way? And why does it feel like it's just could actually kill me? Okay, so he and I are working together. He is flipping all over the place and his body is doing this. And that doesn't look normal, but it doesn't look like he's exhausted either, right? He's got energy coursing through him. He's doing this. He's like, he's moving all together and he's vibrating side to side and front to back. And his eyes are kind of spacing out. And he's able to talk. He's like, man, what the hell is happening? We can explain this as Kundalini. And instead of Kundalini, let's just call it, energy that basically you found an extra tail of yours. If you had a tail and you had a plug and you plug yourself into the wall and you plug not only one of your tails in the wall, maybe you have 5 tails. You plugged all 5 of them into the wall and you have that much energy coursing through you. Because the truth is your anatomy and physiology is designed to run that much energy. But it is designed to run that much energy only when it's coordinated to do so, because it's kind of like a fire hose moving that much energy through it that requires very specific holding and aiming. It requires a specific type of coordination and effort to hold and aim it And when you do it right, it is in turns incredibly blissful, and it turns and brings you into a flow state. Not only flow state within you, but flow state around within everything. And you get these glimpses of what people use around with words like mystical or religious or enlightenment, those types of words. But if you don't hold it with coordination and aim and knowledge about what's actually happening, then all of a sudden you are a fire hose being held by a little baby and it's whipping all over the place, and your life just goes down. So one of my points that I like to make is it's not something to be healed from. It's like an athletic event that needs to be learned about. What are the rules and how do I play? How do I learn to play this game? Because it does require you to get it right. And I'll talk more about that, but there are specific things that you can do and people that are out there trained to help you with this, because like any really top quality athletic event, which I would say figuring out how to maneuver Kundalini through your system is kind of Olympic level event, as you probably well know, because you've got that much energy running through you, and it's not going to give you any choice. But like any Olympic event, it does require a coach. Nobody, even performing at that level, nobody would even dream of trying to perform at that level without having access to other nervous systems helping support them in their challenge of moving through that level of athletic skill set. Okay, enough of that. Okay, so let's get right to what may be going on with with the Kosha model. I know I'm going to stick with the Koshas because some of you like really love this model, and so we're just going to go with it. Okay, Koshas. Let's look at the Koshas like well, koshas are energy, and they're like different frequencies of energy. Something way that I'll think about them today would be the first one might be considered a violin, the second one could be considered a cello, and the third one could be considered a big bass. Okay, they're separate, they have separate tones they put out into the body and into the space. They're all beautiful tones. They're all beautiful in and of themselves. Violin, cello, bass. Now imagine you have all three are playing together and one of them is out of tune. Then yourself and everybody in the room just like cringes. There's a bodily contraction away from that thing that's happening. When they are in tune, they share energy and information. They're actually synchronizing and beautifully waving and integrating this experience that's happening in my body right now and in the space. Okay, I'm going to run first kosha here. And if you're highly sensitive, you can feel this happening. I'm putting it around here. Now I'm going to run second. Second one is kind of like when you yawn and you're stretching. That's the second kosha, just loving itself. Like you were in the yawn, the part of you is stretching. It's so good. Third kosha is when the body actually starts to vibrate, oscillate. It goes front and back and it goes side to side. I can break down into those in another video, but this is basically there's mechanics for how these koshas move energy and tell physical body what to do. Okay. So when you have energies and frequencies that are telling your body what to do, it knows how to calm itself all the way down. Not only in the body, but calm itself all the way down in the body. And those of you who are field centric that feel yourself as everything, that first kosha transmits to everything. And then you can feel yourself calmly, easily, safely as everything. That's the internal experience of that first kosha. And that's one that most of us never really fully got as kids, especially if you're neurodivergent, traumatized from major traumas like that would cause PTSD or complex PTSD, where you weren't actually recognized for what you are and who you are completely as a child. And if you weren't recognized as maybe a violin, what that means is you have 4 strings. You didn't ever find one of your strings because those strings only play when somebody else strums them. And that's how we're designed, is that we actually only wake up to what we are when we are mirrored by other. It's called attunement. And so if you're a violin only thinking you have 3 strings and then you have a fourth over there, you're always going to be anxious. You're always going to be on alert because something's missing. You're not fully able to contribute. It's like, I have a gift here. I know it's here, but I don't know what I'm here to do. And part of the reason is that you weren't actually shown that you have this other tone that you can make, that when you integrate all 4 of those strings together, you feel more whole and more complete, more safe in the moment, but more dynamic, more emotional, more passionate, more clear thinking, more logical thinking, and then more able to receive like the beauty. And you can go up and you can go down, and you go up and you go down. You can clear, you can move forward, and you can stop and you can pause. So let's look at this guy's experience. I'm working with him. He's like flipping all over the place, and notice the contrast. Like he's chronically fatigued, but he's jerking all over the place. So he's got a ton of energy moving through him, more than most. So why is he so fatigued? He's so fatigued because he's spending all of the energy he has voluntary access to internally trying to fight the Kundalini energy moving through him. And that will exhaust him so much so that he can't actually leave the bed, or certainly not leave the house. He can't have a job. He can't have a relationship. Like he's got to manage his life. So he's got energy here. He's got energy here and energy here in number 2 and number 3. Number 2, he's stretching. Number 3, he's wiggling all over the place. And those are 2 strings that are out of tune, or two instruments that are out of tune. Okay, so part of what he's actually needing is access to this first kosha. Okay, and I've talked about this in other videos, but just as the reminder, that first kosha is, as I was demonstrating a minute ago, your energy can go up, and if your energy goes up, it feels amazing until you find yourself stuck there. And then all of a sudden you're jacked up, you're over caffeinated, you're getting anxious, you're getting fearful, you're not going to sleep. And as soon as you start losing sleep and you're over anxious and overexcited, you can't communicate with people, you can't do your job. You wake up and your life actually starts to go downhill really quickly when you get stuck in activated, excited energy. So you need to have access to the first kosha energy, and it needs to have access to your entire brain, including the spinal cord from the skull all the way down to the sacrum, the bottom of the tailbone, and back up, which is also your brain. The spinal cord is your brain, and the blob up here is the brain. I call it the blob and the wiggly because the spinal cord, when it's working properly, wiggles. Okay. So here's the problem. Here's the problem. You're stuck up here. You might recognize yourself in this story. But then when you get around somebody that you don't like, or in a situation that doesn't feel safe, or you're not, or you're easily activated in the situation, and then you have to retreat from life. You may have to quit your job, move back to mom and dad's house. That's what this situation causes, and it can cause a lot of sickness as well, sickness in the body, because the body can't actually come back to safety. And when you're stuck in not safety, right, it gets lethal. It can get lethal. So now it's that first kosha. So that's my recommendation. What I needed myself years ago, and I didn't realize was a thing. And so that's again what I needed. And so this is what working with this guy with, but also what I'm noticing within most of my other clients is they're overactivated. It's this Kundalini coming through. And so this unique situation is this Kundalini thing is again, like 5 times as much energy coming through your body as it used to. And something that Carl Jung mentions in this book, I may have said this already, sorry, I've made a couple of these videos. Sorry if I'm spacing it. But he said basically what he thinks is happening in what he's seeing in many of his therapy appointments isn't actually pathology that he'd been trained to see, but it was actually this Kundalini awakening process gone wrong or being stuck. That's what we're talking about here, is that the energy here, up here, makes your life go up, which is great. It's blissful and it's happy, and that's what we get. This is what we seek. But we also need the rest of the wave, right? Because we want our life to be We want our life to be a wave, right? And the first kosha is this one, and that's the one that brings you all the way down into safety, all the way down into the moment. Sitting and purely receiving sensation from the body, from all parts of the body, internal, external, that isn't excited, that isn't anxious. And it's a hard place to get to if you're hypervigilant, if you're traumatized, if you're overactivated. In fact, it may be a rather impossible place to get to without somebody that is skilled in energetic attunement. Because that's that person, when I say skilled in energetic attunement, a yogic process, meaning somebody that can go from dual, where I am over here separate, into non-dual, field-centric, and then watching for the physiology to shift, watching for the breath to shift. And they do it in themselves. But if they're also working with you, they're going to be able to see into parts of your nervous system that you can't see because you're too close. You're too close, meaning the eyeball will never see itself. My fingertip will never feel itself. By design, we're too close to see a lot of our own inner subconscious workings. So the way out for some people here, and it was certainly this way for me, the way to actually find freedom when stuck in this process was to find somebody else that knew how to energetically attune to me. And as Heidi Prieb, talks about it or mentions it, she's like, we need to mentor ourselves, have our environment mentor us, because we recognize what we are, and we are dualistic, meaning we can play ourselves, but we're also non-dual. And non-dual means we are everything. And so we require part of us that's everything reflect back on us what we are, the parts that we didn't actually fully recognize as kids. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, just put it in the comments here and be like, hey, what? What are you talking about? So the last analogy I'll make with this Kundalini thing is that sometimes it spontaneously comes over you and you don't know what's happening, and it can be very high and it can be very exciting. One of my clients I talked to last week said he was reading a book in his early 20s and he felt the sensation coming up through his spine, and then all of a sudden he floated into this state of elation where he felt he was up above his problems. The things that used to bother him no longer were even an issue. He felt this experience transcending him. He didn't think his way up there. He was in it as it happened. Then he noticed that he was able to dialogue easily with his higher consciousness, if you will. He just had access to this information that seemed like it had always been there, but somehow he'd been disconnected from it. And he lived there for a couple of weeks. He just felt so freeing and free and floaty. And then all of a sudden he just went back down into retreat and anxious and separation and guarding and hypervigilance. And so then he had to sequester himself, but he also felt the pain of then meeting the needs that we have, like the 6 needs that we have. The last 3 are significance, love and connection, and contribution. Those all require not actually sequestering ourselves, but actually being able to feel separate and connected, and being able to actually move energy within ourselves and then through space, because that's what we are. We are movers of energy. But if we're not actually shown that when we're kids, when that Kundalini comes along and finds its way into our body and we start getting charged with this Kundalini, the Kundalini moving through us, if we don't actually have the skill set to know what to do with our focus, what to do with our posture, what to do with our breath to help influence where that energy goes, we're going to be taken for a ride down. So it's not a thing that you're not broken. Or these folks that I work with, if you resonate with this, that may be a thing. You're not broken. That may be the case. It might actually just be an athletic event that you haven't actually learned the rules for. Just like learning to ride a unicycle. The part of you, if you've never ridden a unicycle, your unicycle skills are not broken. That would be silly. So don't try to heal them. You actually just have to learn to set up the experiences, a sequence of experiences where you get to learn to deal with the major instability of sitting on a seat with one wheel, which is going to feel scary and dangerous and stuff for a couple of days. And all of a sudden it starts to figure itself out. that's the trick with this Kundalini experience. If you look at it like an athletic endeavor and you build yourself a little training protocol with it, that gives you the best opportunity to move through it. So that's my rant for the day. If this sounds like you, then my recommendation would be to find somebody that really is skilled with attuning nervous systems that are undergoing this Kundalini process. Yeah, this is what I do. If you like these stories and you like the sense of what it feels like to listen to me talk, this is just me. This is how I am. And you might actually notice that just listening to me talking about these things, you notice that your body's already moving in a way, because I'm doing this in the background right now, just moving it up and down. So part of my goal of me doing these videos is that many of you that are going through this process won't have an opportunity to work with me personally and may not need to. You find somebody else, but you can, just by watching these videos, you can track what am I doing with my focus. Just these videos actually provide some of the mirroring that I didn't get when I was a kid, or maybe you didn't get, when you were a kid. So just, watching the videos, watching some of the other videos, the videos where I'm showing where the energetic wave is moving through, and I'll put some of that in here as well. So my recommendation would be, whether or not you work with me, somebody else, find somebody that can help you as basically a Kundalini coach. Not just, and here's a warning, like many of the Kundalini folks are going to really want to help you get up to the bliss state. And here's the issue with that, is they send you up, but that's really close to this issue up here where you get up, and if you don't have the first kosha trained to move through your spinal cord from the bottom to the top, then that can be a problem. Okay. So if this sounds good to you and you want to pursue more, there should be some information down in the description here. The best way to find out what I've got coming up, whether they're courses or upcoming events or potential to work with me directly. You can join the mailing list, and there should also be a video on there that says, what next? And I should be keeping that updated right now. At the time of this recording, I've got 2 spots, available to be working with somebody. So it's good to check. Good to check that video, because I have a certain number that I work with, and then once I'm tapped out, I'm tapped out. But I'll have other opportunities for people to come on to live Zoom calls, taking a course, because it requires a lot of work on your own, on one-on-one, or I mean on your by your onesie. Specific things you can do with your rest, with your focus, with your posture, with your exercise, with the people that you put yourself around relationship. And then after those ones, then finding somebody that can work as a Kundalini coach, as well. But most of it you'll do on your own when you get the story right. Thanks for hanging out today, and for following the channel, and adding whatever comments that you add. I love to hear your stories, and feel free to, I invite you to subscribe if you want to hear more. If not, I wish you the best. Click the bell icon. I think that makes a difference if you want to hear when something else comes up. All right, y'all. Take care.